So let's get started. Again, good evening and welcome. My name is Larry Calbers. I hold the R. Chad Drier Chair in Accounting Ethics, and I'm the Associate Dean in the College of Business Administration here at LMU. So the Drier Chair in Accounting Ethics Distinguished Speaker Series is one of the many activities of the College of Business Administration's Institute for Business Ethics and Sustainability. Before I introduce our speaker, Mr. Rene LaVigne, let me give you a few guidelines and program format for tonight. So let me just share my screen. So we will have some Q&A, so please type your questions in the Q&A window. The questions will be moderated during and after the presentation. For the most part, I'll leave the questions until after Mr. LaVigne's made his presentation, but we may ask him a question as he goes to keep him on his toes. You can also use the chat window to post comments that are not questions. And for those of you using CBA Advantage, a QR code will be displayed later in the presentation. We're also going to have a special Zoom reception just for students right after the presentation takes place, which will allow students to ask Mr. LaVigne questions face-to-face, at least Zoom version of face-to-face. So we'll put a Zoom link in the chat near the end of the presentation so you can switch over to that. The webinar is also being recorded and will be available after the presentation, probably in a couple of days on the CBA YouTube channel. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Rene LaVigne, LMU Accounting Class of 1983. Mr. LaVigne is currently the President and Chief Executive Officer of Iron Bow Technologies with headquarters in Herndon, Virginia. His career spans 3 decades of sales, marketing, operations, finance, and accounting experience at organizations such as Aptus, Northrop Grumman IT, Federal Data Corporation, and Ernst & Young. As president and CEO, Rene led the team that once was Aptus Technology Solutions in the spin-out from Aptus to become what is now Iron Bow Technologies and has been leading the business since 2004. Rene is a certified public accountant and a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. He's been a member of the board of directors of the Technology Council of Maryland since 2002 and most recently served as the board's chairman. He was a founding member and chair of the Prince George's Technology Council and now serves as a member of the board of directors of the Prince George's Community College Foundation and chairman of the board at Doctors Community Hospital. I'm now going to turn the Zoom controls over to our amazing LMU alumnus and speaker for tonight, Mr. Rene LaVigne. Welcome, Rene.
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank you for this invitation. I'm really appreciate it, and I'm so excited about it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to join you guys this evening. Larry contacted me in the late summer, early fall, and we were trying to put this together, and I had a little speed bump that wouldn't allow for it, and I'm just happy that that we've got to this point and we can share this evening together. I'd much rather be there in person and hugging you up in the room. I really enjoy that, but virtual will have to suffice, of course. This pandemic has everything turned on its ear. And like everything else, we've adopted as a business. You guys have adopted as faculty and students and others. And you just got to keep moving forward, right? Got to keep putting one foot in front of the next, and we'll get this behind us at some point in time. Now, I'm told we have over 200 attendees. I'll put it that way, 200 attendees, and I don't know to be overwhelmed or underwhelmed, but I'm going to say I'm overwhelmed that we have 200 people that are interested in hearing about ethics and integrity on a Wednesday evening. I can just see me and my gang back in the 80s saying, "Hey, what are you doing tonight? And what are you doing tonight?" And some of us saying, "Well, we're going to attend this ethics and integrity class with this older guy from the 50s." Doesn't sound all that thrilling and exciting, but I'm hoping to make this interesting for you. With Larry's permission, we're going to put some building blocks around this. So I'm going to start a bit. We thought it would be great for you guys to hear a little bit more about my background, professional career. Then we'll plug in ethics, and we're going to talk a little bit about diversity, and then perhaps some thoughts for the future for you guys, and maybe something you can take with you. So that's my mom and my siblings, and then some cousins and aunts. I'm a native Californian, born and reared in Los Angeles. Currently reside in Boca Raton, Florida. So I like the sun. Coming to you from Herndon, Virginia, which is a suburb outside of DC, which is where our business is headquartered. Very tight-knit family, Catholic, working class family. I'm the eldest of four, and always been a bit of a hard charger in that respect. I'm the first in the family, either side, to attend school, and we've got some other graduates behind me, but in my immediate family, I'm the only one to get a degree from a four-year institution. So very special for me, and obviously the family as well. So that's my childhood home, and it's about 500 square feet, or was 500 square feet, 2 bedrooms and a bath. I know most of you guys are looking at apartments that shape up in that manner. If you guys are familiar with the geography, so this is in South Central. 110th Street is where we live, just off of Broadway. The house is no longer there, was razed. We did have a very unique treasure there. We had a double lot, and the house set back, so we had a lot of room, and we did a lot of stuff outdoors. So in any event, it's only a half an hour from campus, and from a physical perspective, but from an emotional and psychological perspective, I can tell you it was a million miles away. And so any event, I thought that would help you guys a little bit with the grounding. Now, oftentimes, I don't start with my college background. I'll start with my high school background, and particularly when I think that there may be some Cubs on the line, and I'd be surprised if there aren't some Cubs on the line. Quite frankly, we have Cubs everywhere. So here in the DC metropolitan area, we've got over 200 Loyola High School alum in the area at any given point in time, and for a myriad of reasons. But it was amazing to me that we had so many here, and that we pretty much cross the country. But I start with Loyola because it was a key differentiator in my life, and was my bridge to the future. And it really, really kind of put me ahead of the game when I look at my peers from elementary school and just from the neighborhood and in the surrounding region. I learned early on what it meant to compete. And I'm showing you a picture of high school basketball, but not just in sports, in everything in life, in the classroom, which is extremely important, work environments, activities, special projects, and what about teamwork, right? And coalescing and collaborating with others. So it was an indelible mark in my development, and one that I'll never forget. And so I oftentimes lead with that. I feel like when I got to LMU, I was thoroughly prepared for it in many respects, because of the Loyola tradition and the regiment that we go through. I felt very much prepared. Now, you look at why LMU, and natural connection between the high school and the university. And at one time, by the way, we shared campuses way back in the mid 1860s or the latter 1800s. And but that's not why I selected it. So like any Loyola High student, you have high aspirations, and So you take a flyer at an Ivy League. Some of my classmates take more than a flyer at the Ivy League and get accepted to many. I was not one, but certainly did that. And then I really wasn't quite sure what I was going to do for college, because that decision was, for the most part, left up to me. My parents didn't have experience with it, and the last major decision that they really influenced was that move to go to Loyola High School, which in fact was also a million miles away, because the schools that were more popular were Sarah, Urban Day, Mount Carmel, which no longer exists. But in any event, this decision was mine. So in conversation with our guidance counselor, and I remember it like yesterday, Father Prieto, we talked about the options, and we talked about local and options outside of the immediate area. He really influenced me, and he said, you know, for the things that you want and the things that you want to do, you really need to consider Loyola. And as I investigated further, it made complete sense for me. It was about the right size, not too big, not too small. I was never very interested in going to a 50,000 person school. I wanted something that was much more manageable. And coming from 1,200 students at Loyola to what was 4,000 undergrad, and my entry point was a good place to be. The other thing was affordability. So there wasn't any resources to send me to school. Where could I get the most money to go to school? And I fared very well with scholarships and grants through Loyola and a few other schools as well. Most importantly, we talked about the nurturing environment, and that is very, very critical in your college college scenario. So as you're thinking about what kind of environment you want to be in, do you want to be a number, or do you want to be in a place that you feel connected and that you can make a difference in that kind of environment? So so that was a big check. And then the geography was really important. So it was far enough from home that I felt like I was away. And as I indicated, it was a million miles away psychologically, but close enough that if I had to get back, I could get back. And then we realized that going to school away would put an additional burden on me or the family, trying to get back and forth and that sort of thing. And it allowed me to work. I started a job when I was in high school as a junior, and worked throughout college, a variety of different shifts. And when I wasn't playing basketball or I got hurt, I was working. So it was a great choice for me for all those reasons. And when I look back on it from a career standpoint, I wouldn't change a thing. So the handsome guy to the left with I would call a trim down afro, because that wasn't as big as it was at a point in time, but was the last time that I actually carried an afro. So that's me in entry to Loyola. And if you can believe it or not, I still have what was our ID card. Now, LMU wasn't too cognizant about cyber security fraud and or stolen identities. I had to Photoshop this because of all things, our student ID number was our social security number. So if you lost that, number one, your social was floating around. Number two, I wasn't going to put it on the screen and let you guys see it with my social on it. So it's kind of funny when you fast forward, you think about the security issues that we have, and me being in the technology space. Over to the right is that good-looking guy grown up, and my youngest son, who is 25 now and is an alum. He's a class of 2018, and while I didn't push him, I did try to influence him to major in accounting. He decided he wanted to be a finance major, and so he did, and he's doing quite well. So he'll be happy to know that he made the presentation. So accounting, really my path to success. You know, I wasn't interested in science and wasn't that interested in engineering. I knew I wanted to do something in business coming out of high school, but I wasn't sure what. And I started to press a few buttons. Number one objective for me was to be employable. I needed to launch my career. I did not have the time or energy to go through 4 years of school, do what it takes to get the degree, and then be in a position that I needed to search for a job opportunity or career opportunity. So I wanted to accelerate that. And back in those days, you really had through your sophomore year to make a decision on what your discipline was going to be. And during the sophomore year, I excelled in accounting, and I had mentors, juniors and seniors. I talked to them a lot about the differentials between the various disciplines in the School of Business, and the numbers spoke to me. There's 1,000 in the School of Business and 50 accounting majors. And so I said, I like those numbers. I can differentiate myself there, number one. Number two, if you talk to any accounting major, it's the harder route. It's the longer path. And now it's essentially a 5-year path, right? Going from 120 credits to 150 credits. So I put my stake in the ground and I started navigating as a sophomore as to how I would further differentiate myself. And I would encourage you guys to be thinking about that all the time, quite frankly. But I got involved early with the Accounting Society as a sophomore. I then positioned myself to be the junior representative. And then as a senior, I was the chairman of the Accounting Society. Now, I'm told one of my colleagues may be on the line, and we were really good buddies and tight buddies. John Yamashita, he was my vice chair, and so we got along very well, and both ended up leveraging that to a successful career in public accounting. Quite frankly, when interview time came along, and we did not have what you guys have with the externships and internships and early visibility, we had to create that for ourselves, which we did in a regular basis, but we position ourselves to be at the forefront of the discussion. And so by the time the interview season came to fruition, I had multiple opportunities, and so did John. And I look at accounting, so I talked about science, whether it's medicine or engineering. Accounting to me is the anatomy of business, and it's really the foundation for my success. And I use this foundation every single day, even though I haven't been in charge of finance or accounting since 1994. But it's something that sticks with you, and I rely upon it, quite frankly, on a daily basis. So that accounting platform led to 10 years in public accounting, and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world either. It's the best education that you can absolutely get professionally. You have a myriad of client experiences, a great deal of social networking with other achievers. Quite frankly, you build your skill set much more broadly than I think people view accountants, and that you may view yourselves, quite frankly. And the exposure is tremendous. And so I really cherish those years, and I learned early on. Every day in a accounting setting, and particularly a public accounting setting, was an investment in my future. Now, ultimately, you get to a place where either you decide you're going to be partner, or they decide you're going to be a partner, and you might choose to do something different. Although it's different these days in that there could be a career track in public accounting that doesn't center around being a partner. What happened for me was that we had a merger between Ernst & Winnie and Arthur Young, becoming Ernst & Young, and the 12-year track to partner suddenly became 14 years. And while that wasn't the end of the world, it lengthened the time that I was going to spend doing audits and business advisory services, and also got me thinking about other things. And one of the things that I thought about was, did you want to be a business owner someday? Did someday you want to be, oh, I don't know, maybe in the position that I'm in today? And that influenced me to be receptive to opportunities. And I was out on firm business. There was a program called the Entrepreneur of the Year program, sponsored at that time by Ernst & Young, Inc. magazine, and Merrill Lynch. And I was interviewing the CEO of a tech company who was devoid of a CFO. He started working on me, and 3 or 4 months later, I was the new CFO of that company. And it was a great move, although I had a little bit of consternation at first because I went from this highly starched environment with a collegial atmosphere to essentially an environment that had a very large cross-section of society in the professional world, and not everybody was ready for that. So any event, it turned out to be a really good move for me. I was able to absorb that company in a short time span and spent the year as a CFO, and then became the general manager of the business. 3 years later, essentially led the divestiture of that business and retired the 2 principal owners. I went on to transition the business, which was sold to a Carlyle-based platform. Carlyle is one of the preeminent private equity firms in the marketplace, and that really was another launch pad for me. So we moved the business to another larger platform. I continued to grow that business, and we sold the business to Northrop Grumman, where I did it again. So it was kind of a version, 3.0 at that point. And all along the way, a 10-year cycle, the platform was grown from 20 million to $1 billion. And so I got to the end of that 10-year period, and I felt like, I've done what I need to do here. It was time to think about the next thing. And I took some time off, basically a year, thinking about that and thinking about what I want to do next. And that bug about starting a business or owning my own business was deeply embedded in me. And so I started to really start to press those buttons. And the tech space was moving so fast that I thought, that's going to take too long. I had a bunch of opportunities presented to me, and one was via a competitor. They thought that I could help them grow their business, and we knew each other in the marketplace. And so I decided to do that. I stood up what is essentially Ironbow Technologies today in that platform. But I will tell you, it was the most miserable first 3 years of my life. The legacy executives were not of the same mindset, culture, and philosophically, we were in different places. And it took me 3 years to transition them out of the business. And of course, I went because we were bringing private equity to the platform in the form of New Mountain Capital. And ultimately, we were able to move this business forward. And so what came out of that was 2 businesses. We split the company. We put one on the market. We sold that business to a company called URS, which has now been acquired by Amco, and it's a $20 billion entity. And I led a team to do a management buyout of the Ironbow platform. And so as we sit here today, I'm just beyond 17 years in this engagement, and it couldn't have gone better, quite frankly. So we did the management buyout in 2011, and with essentially sweat equity and a lot of debt, gambled on ourselves, quite frankly. So I talked about investing in yourself, and we were able to grow the business considerably. We started to attract interest over that period of time. And we had positioned ourselves well. We wanted to do some acquisitions, but we did not have a lot of capital laying around to do acquisitions. And so we brought in a financial partner, and having now 3 experiences in private equity, that seemed like the best route to go, because none of us were looking to get out of the business or to retire, but we wanted to accelerate our growth. And so organically, we've grown this business to $1 billion. We're looking to grow it to a multi-billion-dollar platform. How could we do that? And we struck an arrangement with HIG Capital, which took me and my team from the ownership, majority owners, to a minority ownership position. And it's working very well. So I call our people team members. We got 850 team members around the business. We've got 6 offices, from the headquarters here all the way to Oahu, Hawaii. We do a lot of business in the Pacific Rim there. And effectively, we are a technology solutions and managed services organization, focused on network infrastructure, data center, cybersecurity, end user devices, and collaboration. So we do a bunch of business in the video space. And quite frankly, 10 years ago, what you guys are seeing now from a video perspective, we've been doing for over a decade, and we've been selling technology, similar technology, for 2 decades. But we're completely video enabled. So our entire office infrastructure is hardwired for video. I have separate video systems. I have integrated video systems. I have mobile video that I can do on my cell phone or iPad or the laptop, and we're based on a Cisco platform. And today you would call that WebEx principally, but there's some other elements around that. So it's how we run our company, quite frankly. And so when the pandemic hit, we already had about 1/4 of the workforce that was working remotely, and that principally meant at home. Others were in the office or in a customer site. And but we were engaging in this way. Overnight, we went from 1/4 of the workforce to 90% working remotely. And the only folks that weren't working remotely are folks that are working supporting our telehealth business, where we do what I'm going to call assembly and light manufacturing. And that is the next element I wanted to talk about, because it's really a critical element that is reflective of our growth and demonstrating significant growth into the future. So I talked about the base platform and the things that we're focused on. Well, a decade ago, and this speaks to entrepreneurship, and everything I've been talking about thus far is about being entrepreneurial, quite frankly. And this speaks to entrepreneurship. So we started to develop a pilot with the Veterans Affairs organization, and their objective a decade ago was to figure out how to extend healthcare out to the veteran. Many of our veterans live in rural situations. They have many health challenges. Quite frankly, the Veteran Affairs and the hospital system is overwhelmed. And so they were, quite frankly, ahead of the game, ahead of commercial healthcare and ahead of the world when it comes to virtual care. And we had a very astute account manager who took our technology expertise, married it up with our collaboration expertise, and started to develop this pilot and started to bring in other resources to make it happen. Ultimately, we built a virtual care program for the VA, and we are the developers and the purveyors and the managers of the largest telehealth system in the world, most comprehensive, most virtual consultations done. I think they're in excess of 8 million or something like that now. And it's telehealth what I call not telehealth, that soft telehealth that you do on your iPhone, but this is telehealth with practical applications. So we actually build solutions whereby a provider, a physician, can treat a patient remotely at one of the VA clinics, let's just say, with a facilitator on the other end. And the technology is as good as being face-to-face or in person with that patient. And this has really allowed the VA to extend their healthcare out and to refine their organization and to become just more effective and more efficient and save lives, quite frankly. When the pandemic hit, it became even a larger problem for them. And fortunately, we co-developed a solution about 3 years ago in the form of a tablet that could be dispensed to a veteran. And they can remotely, they can check all key vitals and glucose and blood pressure, those types of things without having the patient lie to them. And that happens on a quite frequent basis. And so it's nothing like being able to check up on your patient daily, as opposed to, I'll see you in 6 months, I'll see you in a year. So much can go wrong. And it's really changed healthcare. That has evolved for us. And 6 years ago, we started a commercial healthcare practice, and that led us to building our own solutions. So not just partnering with companies, but actually building our own solutions. I used to tell the team, I say, we don't build anything, we just make things work, make things better. The Cisco's of the world and Hewlett Packards and Dells, they all manufacture stuff. We make it work. Well, it's no longer the case. We now build stuff and we're highly recognized for it. So, and then finally, if you hadn't picked up on this, we are a large federal government contractor. About 80% of our revenues come through the DoD and civilian agencies are like Social Security or State Department or the Internal Revenue Service. And then the other 20% is made up of SLED, so state, local, and education, commercial businesses like Iron Bow, for example, and commercial healthcare. So that profile that I just laid out, any one of you, if you so desire, can be a Rene LaVigne. You can do this. And this all started at LMU and me making a decision that I was going to major in accounting and what I was going to do to make that effective for me, and then essentially taking it from there. So the title, ethics and integrity, right? So building a career on it. So I can firmly tell you that my career and everything that we just discussed could not be possible without strict adherence to ethics, governance, and compliance. Your name and your reputation precedes you in the marketplace. And I run into many folks that, you don't want to do business with them. If you don't have to do business with them, you just go on about your business, so to speak. So it's, it's a messy world out there, quite frankly. And ethics is critical. I can recall being in an audit class as a senior and us going over ethics in the chapter or two, whatever it was. I don't remember it that cleanly. But a bit bored by it and thinking, why do we actually have to talk about this? Why is it that we have to talk about doing the right thing and, conduct and behavior and that sort of thing? Doesn't everyone, okay, don't they do the right thing? And when you get in business, you find out that the answer is a resoundingly no. Not everyone is on the same page with you. And for a number of reasons, and a lot of it's financially driven, of course. But I wasn't going to be a part of anything like that. And so when I talk about my experiences, and really I look at it like I've had 3 employment situations. So Ernst & Young for a decade, a decade with the first run that I told you, and now 17 years, the IBES platform. You know, integrity's always been at the forefront of our core values, with trust and handling ourselves in an ethical manner. And one of the greatest compliments that that I think you can get is from a competitor of ours remarked that, you know what, you guys have always done it the right way. You guys always do what you say you're going to do. You live up to your commitments, and you take responsibility and accountability. So, so that is worth its weight in gold when you get that from a competitor. This is a snapshot of our intranet. So the IBES intranet, which for all intent and purposes for you guys is the employee portal. And so no external access to this, but this is where we house specific collateral material and data that we want to share with employees. And as you can see, it's quite built out. I positioned this so that you would see the snapshot of our ethics page here, and then the supporting elements to the ethics page. So you can see on the left-hand side, message from the president and CEO, our code of ethics, conduct, and responsibility, compliance organization chart, or org chart, compliance contacts, and our program policies, and then our program training documents. Yes, training documents. So what we've captured here is, you know, a message from me about how we're going to conduct ourselves, what integrity means, fair dealings. The handbook goes into exhaustive details, about 21 pages, about conflict of interest, bribes, kickbacks, procurement integrity, and the like. And we actually put together an independent compliance committee, folks that have backgrounds that would be good candidates for that. So legal backgrounds, contractual backgrounds, and accounting backgrounds, such that there's a committee for folks to go to if they have an ethical concern that they've identified or believe to exist in the company. And notice that I'm not at the head of that. For example, I could be the reason for an ethical concern. There should be a mechanism to get that reported. And so there's a direct line with the Ethics and Compliance Committee to the Board of Directors, where I'm not the chair anymore of the Board of Directors. HIG has the chair position, although I serve on the Board of Directors along with my CFO. So we take this seriously, and I want you guys to take this seriously. I'm going to share some experiences that I've had. We have all of our employees certify that they've gone through the materials and that they've taken the training annually. And when you're in the business that we're in, and particularly dealing with the federal government, as they say where I come from, they don't play. So when something goes wrong and there's criminal or some civil matter that needs to be investigated, you don't want to be on the other side of the federal government, because that bucket is unlimited, and they won't stop until they get to the end. I've seen it multiple times. So this is maybe the most interesting part of this, and I could probably write a book, quite frankly, if someone wanted to do so. I think in general, people start off wanting to do the right thing, but greed gets the best of them at the end of the day. So I outlined 4 experiences here. I could do a dozen, but I didn't think I had time for a dozen. But these I have personal experience with, personal touch. So this is not a story about that I read. These are scenarios that I know of personally. And so a DoD workstations project back in the 90s, 2 account executives, one in his 30s and one in his 40s, were principally in charge of a government program And in the 90s, you guys wouldn't know too much about this, but in the 90s, there was still white box development. So today, if you have a laptop or a desktop, it's probably a Dell or an HP. Maybe it's a Lenovo. Maybe you had a Microsoft tablet, iPad, something like that, right? But then there were white box manufacturers, and in the 90s, there was a good opportunity for that. So in any event, we had such a contract, and those two account executives got a little bit off track and bargained for some influence. And believe it or not, white box manufacturer put a financial benefit in front of them. And at the end of the day, it was discovered. Those two individuals were found guilty. And the youngest one, in his 30s, newly married, two young kids, I think at the time, 4 and 2, 3 and 1, something in that neighborhood. Not only had restitution, but then had to serve time, and did that for about $50,000, and the other for $30,000 or $40,000. Doesn't make any sense. No sense at all, right? So if you think you're going to get away with it, you're probably not. The second item, 0 to 500 in contracts for a small business. So I know an individual and a company, and we did business together in the 90s. This individual worked for one of the manufacturers that we had a significant partnership with. Bright guy, and he went on to join another company. Got into some situation, ended up suing that company, and got some payout for it. He took that payout and he launched his own business. And he was a small disadvantaged business. He was a hub zone, and he put his wife in the business as a majority owner, and they were then a woman-owned business. So he was covering all the angles for preferential contracting. Well, his business wasn't doing that well, and he was just kind of bumping along. Ultimately, he and a contracting officer conspired for him to win some contracts. And overnight, this company went from, and I'm going to say $1 million, let's just say in revenue, after being in business for some years, to winning over $500 million of contracts, some 4 contracts, significant dollar values. One was they beat us on that we had for 14 years. And so that was an unlikely thing, but it happened. And it ultimately didn't pass the sniff test. And so there was a lot of commotion. And I guess, you know, those people get a little bit arrogant. It's like, who's not going to notice this when you're winning business that has traditionally gone to a competitor that looks like this, or one that looks like that, or one that looks like another. In any event, there was an investigation. Individual had to go before Congress. Meanwhile, Department of Justice did their investigation, and they were able to pull the strings and dot the I's and pull it all together to figure out there was collaboration and between the two, and it was inappropriate. They were in violation of procurement integrity regulations, and the hammer came down pretty hard. It was a sad story in the end. This individual was so selfish that his wife and he became estranged, and the wife was leveraged in the investigation. She knew nothing about the business, but was listed as the CEO, and he ultimately murdered her. And was a sad story, and a sad story in our community, the tech community. So, you know, this is white collar business, quite frankly. And so, any event, a really bad deal. A retired Navy commander, conflict of interest. So there was a retired Navy commander who was working for one company. He thought of a great idea that he would set up his own company and use his company as an intermediary, which is a complete conflict of interest to do so. In the process, of course, enriching himself, negotiating traffic on contracts, and he too brought in conspirators, essentially, from the government. He got 2 individuals in trouble, including himself. He had to pay back almost $10 million in restitution and serve time. And then the last one, I put my accounting and auditing hat on for this, but this happened to be a mergers and acquisition target that we were pursuing. And this is now a couple of years ago at this juncture. But as I mentioned earlier, I use it every day in my business. I feel like I'm the second best CFO in the company. My CFO is really good, but I'm the second best in the company. And I'm able to gobble up data essentially and make assessments and analyze things that people are trying to figure out. I can do it on the fly, and it's because of my training. And so from an M&A perspective, you know, you get in the weeds of these organizations that you're looking at. And we had a hang up on one transaction that they were doing, and it took a couple of few months for them to start producing materials there. When I got the materials, something didn't make sense to me. And listen, I've been in this marketplace for 25 years. I know the players in the marketplace. I know how it rolls, as they say. And something in there didn't smell right. And it had to do, one, with the profitability of the transaction. And it was a large transaction for the company, $20-some million transaction. But the profitability in it was also extraordinary. And then the third element was there was a vendor that I just wasn't familiar with. And so I started asking questions, and the more questions I asked, you know, the more scrambling there was. I started pulling the strings, and ultimately I determined that there was a fictitious vendor in the mix. Now, the CEO was involved in this, as well as he had a conspirator outside working for one of the tech companies that was his partner in crime on this. And so they had worked this out pretty well, and they had, I don't know, been dipping into the well, so to speak, for 4 to 5 years at that point in time. Anyhow, we shut down the transaction, and we never got, until 2 weeks ago, the real truth. And as we suspected, there was theft. And the CEO was involved. He was terminated. The CFO was terminated, whether she was involved or not. And the COO was also terminated. And I don't think that they were involved, but they should have had some idea or should have raised their hand. And it didn't occur. And so, any event, that individual is paying or has paid restitution, and I don't know what's going to happen to him, but there's always that person that thinks they're smarter than everybody else, right? And ultimately, there's somebody smarter, or something's gonna happen, and loose ends are gonna come about. So don't do it. That's what I have to say. Down the road, there may be some temptations. You say, Mr. LaVigne, Rene said, don't do it. Nothing good's gonna come of it. Don't ever do anything for the financial incentive, even taking a career opportunity. If that's why you're doing it, you're not going to be satisfied in the end. I just want to touch on diversity and inclusion. You know, it's become a popular topic because of all that we saw in 2020, and it shouldn't have had to come to that, quite frankly. A lot of people didn't really understand it. I found in my company, many folks didn't understand it because they had not had experiences that would have opened their eyes to the kind of things that may be happening out there to people of color. And so I shared personal experiences with them, because I thought it would help them. And it did. But what I'd like to see from a society perspective is that we evolve to a natural diversity, not a metric-based diversity. And obviously it's the right thing to do, but it's widely acclaimed, it's noted that the more diverse an organization is, and you can slice diversity in so many different ways, you know, like folks look at Black folks, all Black people aren't the same. All Latino people aren't the same. All white folks aren't the same, right? All Asian folks aren't the same. No, you can slice diversity so many different ways, and that the more diversity that you have, the better off you're going to be with your organization. We pay attention to diversity, and I took a look at it with the C-suite, and I said, you know, we're not doing enough, and we need to make some adjustments in what we're doing. And as I looked across the organization, we had a great diverse population from a gender perspective. Some departments were super, where females represented 70% of the workforce and 30% male. Others we were terrible at, where it was 90% male and 10% female. And, you know, in some of the more technical areas, it's harder to find the females, and I hate losing females when that does occur. But, you know, we got to work harder. You got to find them. You got to go where you're not looking, is how I described it. And so one of the things that we're doing is that we're putting a diversity, equity and inclusion task force. Well, really it's a committee, it's not a task force, committee together that is a cross section of the company, has representation throughout the ranks, so that we can get feedback and we can implement that feedback. And so I'm happy that we're moving in that direction. And I just want to say that, you know, a more diverse society is a better one. I've been using this for a little over 20 years since it came out. And I call it the real truth, but as you can read that, I don't need to read that for you, but as you read that, I was reading Andy Grove's book, who was the chairman of Intel, and it was Only the Paranoid Survive. And I think this is like on page 6, it's stamped in my memory. But I was having great difficulty with the team post one of the sales that we did. And their biggest concern was, is my job safe? You know, am I going to be okay? And in every which way that I could communicate, I was telling them, if you are driving value, first of all, we were acquired because people see value in us. If they didn't see value in us, they wouldn't have acquired us. That's number one. Number two, if you are driving value in your role, there's nothing for you to worry about. Well, I was having difficulty. In any event, I host town halls, and I closed the meeting with this. And I've communicated this to, over the years, I have it framed in my office, and I live by it, quite frankly. And whenever I'm getting that woe is me thing, I point to it, and I tell folks, I said, you know, read that, okay, and implement it. There's nothing more that I can do for you if you can't take ownership, okay, of yourself and your career. So it's proven to work for me and to work out really well. In closing, these are not Rene's 10 commandments or something that I got posted around. But when I was putting this together, these are all things that I live by and all things that I will communicate. But when I was thinking about this audience, I thought about, hey, this works for me, for you guys, right? So, you know, and I put them in an order that I think kind of evolves here, but you know, it doesn't matter and where you start, right? It really doesn't. It really matters about where you're headed. And you guys are all that same footprint right now. You're sitting in the same place, quite frankly. And it's about what you're going to do tomorrow and going forward. And so, first of all, if you don't have a vision of what that looks like, you need to establish one. And in doing so, I mentioned this earlier, invest in yourself daily, but you got to set goals and objectives, and you got to measure the progress. You don't set goals and objectives, then you're just kind of going through the motions, right? You don't know if you've achieved something or not achieved something. Talk to an athlete about getting better, right? You got to set goals and objectives. Otherwise, if you have no benchmarks, you don't know where you started, you don't know where you're at. You don't know if you're better or not better. So you go out there and you get whooped again, quite frankly, right? So I say identify opportunities. Sometimes opportunities are right there and people just walk right past them. Sometimes you have to create the opportunity. Sometimes you're just leveraging the opportunity. But you got to identify them first, and then you got to put it in action. Quite frankly, find yourself some mentors, seek guidance, and I did that. I've done that throughout my career, and I've done that with mentees. Sorry, sorry, I need some water because I'm almost at an hour straight. So integrity matters. We talked about that. You get one reputation. That's it. You mess that reputation up, and it's hard to recapture. Very difficult to recapture. So don't mess up the one. Humility, so important. Be humble. The minute that you get arrogant and get over your ski tips, you're going to get blindsided, and you're going to get knocked off of those skis. So definitely remain humble. Read, write arithmetic. So this is for my accounting folks. A lot of people think it's misaligned to think that you're a numbers person. You need to be more well-rounded than being a numbers person. You need to be able to write. You need to be able to speak. You need to be able to articulate. You need to be able to analyze, assess, and communicate it back. And a lot of people don't get that. And that is career limiting. So I don't care what it is you plan to do. And public accounting certainly helped me expand my platform. And it positioned me to be a general manager of a business, not just a CFO. Perfect your work ethic. So that's generally inherent, but you can work on it. There's a generation that I think has lost the work ethic, not interested in working hard. Well, that's going to be career limiting as well. And if that's what you want, that's fine. But if you want more, you need to perfect that work ethic and put it into action. And then finally, I just say dream big. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do this or you can't do that, because it can be done. And there are plenty of examples out there that would speak to that, quite frankly. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely. Are there going to be trials and tribulations along the way? Absolutely. Are there going to be things that I call speed bumps that people may call mountains and valleys, but at the end of the day, you get through it and it was just a speed bump. You've had it so far in school. You had a big challenge, and all you could see was getting past it, and how are you going to get it done? And ultimately, you got through it, you got past it, you look back and you say, well, maybe it wasn't that tough. And so with that, I'm going to bring this to a close, Larry, and open it up for Q&A.
Thanks so much, Rene. We're actually just about out of time, but keep in mind that we've got our student reception coming up. I'm going to put that Zoom link in there. So there were a few questions. A couple of them were from students, so I hope the students will join us. Rene, just an amazing presentation. I love it. I would have to say one of the best, and I've been having speakers in on ethics since 2006. And, we have a CBA mission now, which, you fit this so perfectly. And that mission is we advance knowledge and develop business leaders with moral courage and creative confidence to be a force for good in the global community. I would say your life and career fits that perfectly. So thank you so much for this.